Billed as the project of the century, China's Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI, was launched in 2013 as a vast investment and development program with the aim of creating a unified market across continents.
I think the Belt and Road Initiative is a win-win, linking up with the countries around the region with financial linkages, with infrastructure projects, with connectivity, with people linkages.
A decade on, the BRI spans Latin America, Europe, Africa, and Asia, with about 150 participating countries, including Singapore.
When China started this initiative, Singapore wanted to get involved because Singapore identifies with many of the goals of the BRI, that is to reduce the trade barriers, to deepen the trade link between the countries of the BRI. Many are so-called new or emerging markets. So that means there will be a lot of untapped opportunities.
And now, looking ahead, the BRI will present even more opportunities for Singapore.
Companies that have green technology and green innovations would have a unique role to contribute.
We've got a deep pool of capital and a wide range of financial products that form the foundation of innovative green financing.
The BRI gives us a very, very good opportunity for us to expand the urbanization business that we have built.
We were founded to help underpin the way in which international business and commerce operates.
The BRI itself has resulted in many opportunities that are now available. We can tap into these doors that are now open.
"2023 marks the 10th anniversary of China's Belt and Road Initiative. Known within China as One Belt, One Road, the BRI is an ambitious global trade and infrastructure development strategy.
贸易是经济增长的重要引擎，我们要有向外看的胸怀，维护多边贸易体制，推动自由贸易区建设，促进贸易和投资自由化、便利化。
The BRI, or the Belt and Road Initiative, basically expands from China to the west through Central Asia and all the way to Middle East and Europe, and then through Southeast Asia, and then through the Indian Ocean, Africa, and Latin America, and so on. The idea is that, bicycle wheels, right? China would be this hub at the center, and then you see all these spokes reaching out from China to these countries, and that is the basic structure of the BRI.
Today, the countries participating in the BRI account for 2/3 of the world's population and between 30 and 40% of global GDP. In the early years, the focus of the BRI was on energy projects as well as infrastructure development, connecting capitals to ports to facilitate the flow of goods. Singapore, with its already developed economy, did not readily fit into this picture. But nonetheless, it was one of the earliest participants in the BRI.
新加坡完全可以在共建“一带一路”的进程当中扮演一个非常重要的角色。我想它不仅会深化我们两国的全方位的合作伙伴关系的内涵，而且也会为新加坡的今后的发展开辟更大的空间。同时呢，也会为这个地区的和平与发展注入新的正能量。
China was very eager to get Singapore involved. You see that Singapore has several government-to-government cooperation projects in China, including the eco-city in Tianjin, the connectivity project with Chongqing, and these are all very good projects to help China to achieve the aims of the BRI.
The financial connection between Singapore and China was also a factor.
Singapore as a financial center is very important because many Chinese firms, when they try to reach out to the Southeast Asia region, Normally, they would not go directly to the country that they are interested in. They would come to Singapore first and use Singapore as the base.
And today, Singapore is among the very top offshore markets for the Chinese yuan.
Singapore has always been one of the leading renminbi offshore markets, besides Hong Kong and London. I think that when you have a well-established exchange, there is rules and regulation in place, so there is credibility and the trust built into the financial system. And also the varieties of the financial products that allow the business to operate in a more efficient and cost-efficient manner.
When companies come to Singapore, they would want to make use of the existing financial facilities they already have. But because China does not yet have the free flow of international exchange, so they have to rely a lot on the renminbi facilities. So this means that to have this renminbi internationalization base in Singapore would help these firms tremendously, at least for the initial period when they try to internationalize from Singapore.
By 2018, Singapore's role in the BRI had become significant.
Singapore sits in a region that is growing rapidly, and there is significant demand for infrastructure, estimated at about US 51 trillion through 2040. So we, through an entity called Infrastructure Asia, work with regional governments and corporates undertaking projects in a few ways. We introduce them to our rich ecosystem of infrastructure players. We encourage international institutional investors to raise capital in Singapore, which can complement capital raising in domestic markets, including China.
But by 2019, there was increasing criticism over the environmental impact of the coal-fired power plants that made up a large number of BRI projects. In response, at the Second Belt and Road Forum in 2019, China outlined a vision of open, green, and clean cooperation.
I do think that there is indeed a lot of determination from China to make sure that the future growth model would be sustainable. But of course, they also encounter some problems in implementing many of these policies, because China, to be frank, didn't have experience in doing sustainable development and green growth. That is another area that China could learn from Singapore, because Singapore's road to sustainable development has largely been rather smooth, because the government plans early and the government put in place the necessary tools, the necessary policy options that they can consider, and all these again are very useful lessons for China.
And now, 10 years since it was launched, the BRI continues to evolve. What are the opportunities in store for Singapore? In 2015, all 193 United Nations member countries adopted the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals. Together with the Paris Agreement, which was ratified a year later in 2016, it marked the beginning of a shift towards a net zero emissions world.
L'accord de Paris pour le climat est accepté.
Back then, China pledged to take its commitment seriously, and in 2019 took steps to begin greening the BRI. Singapore too had also embarked on our own green journey.
Singapore will not be able to stop climate change on our own. All countries, big and small, must join hands and do our share. Not only to fulfill what we have agreed to under the Paris Agreement, but to continue to push the envelope on climate ambition so that we minimize the risk of a climate catastrophe destroying our children's world.
In 2021, Singapore Green Plan 2030 was unveiled. This is a whole-of-nation movement with key focus areas such as improving waste management, lowering carbon emissions, along with developing green services and technologies.
The government has pledged the net zero plan for the entire nation. So this can be seen as a very important commitment and action. Singapore Green Plan has basically laid out a few important ingredients, including building the resilience for the climate risk management and also development of financial products and solutions for a more sustainable economy. Given these broad frameworks, the BRI will come into the picture while it is basically in alignment with the Green Plan from Singapore.
And this will represent opportunities for Singapore companies and their investors.
Large initiatives such as the Belt and Road Initiative mean different things to many different businesses. For a large business, it might seem easier for them to capitalize on the doors that will be opened through the BRI. But that's not to say that opportunities do not exist for small businesses and startups too. Singapore has created a very solid base of entrepreneurs who are willing to take risks and willing to address hard problems and dedicate time and energy to it.
For Singapore firms to do well, they need to figure out what are the roles that they can contribute to, what is the best products you can offer, and what are the services you can provide for such opportunities. So companies that have green technology and green innovations would have a unique role to contribute.
And Singapore entrepreneurs are already coming up with innovations that are contributing beyond our shores. In Vietnam and Indonesia, shrimp farming accounts for up to 60% of the total production in Southeast Asia. In the next 5 years, the market is expected to grow to about $70 billion. But entrenched in traditional industrial practices, shrimp farmers face hurdles in achieving predictable yields, let alone in becoming more sustainable. AquaEasy is a Singapore startup looking to solve this problem through technology.
Technologies like AI and AIoT have been transforming industries for a long time in other sectors. Yeah. But in shrimp farming, I think in farming in general, it is not so much applied yet. Shrimp farming is actually a high-risk farming. One of the biggest problems is that shrimp farmers, they're not data-driven. Typically, they're just doing a lot of guessing. You know, we still hear stories where farmers, they are still using their fingers to dip the water and taste the water to figure out the salinity of the water.
And farmers are inadvertently damaging the environment with their non-scientific methods and approach.
They will treat the water with different types of chemicals. They will overfeed the shrimps to get them to as big as possible so that they can sell for the better price. The problem with this is that the water in the ponds, they get polluted. So the farms pump it out, but they pump it in as well over time, and their productions start to lower. They get smaller and smaller yields. When typically farmers experience that, what they do is they would uproot their farm. When they move to a new area, the forest is clear, the mangroves are damaged. That becomes a problem for the environment. And this cycle will repeat itself.
AquaEasy employs a suite of IoT sensors to help farmers understand the physical conditions of the water in their ponds. The data collected is analyzed by artificial intelligence to better inform farmers of feeding habits, thus reducing overfeeding, which leads to cleaner water.
Overall, AquaEasy solution is able to indirectly reduce the impact to the environment. So when the farmers are doing well with our technology, they will typically stay where they are, and they'll keep farming by actually just stocking more and more without clearing new forests, without destroying any mangroves.
AquaEasy's solution has already been adopted in 11 farms in Vietnam and Indonesia with remarkable results.
The recent years' development has been interesting in that the BRI is focused on aquaculture. So this has renewed interest in terms of investment, And when there is money, there's opportunity. Yeah. I think startups like us, it is an opportunity for us to look into the problems associated with the BRI. How do we bring new technology to transform some of these problems? And also, how do we ride this wave of investment so that we can benefit?
Aqua-Easy isn't the only Singapore startup with a green innovation for Southeast Asia. Ion Mobility is one such company that has already attracted investor interest.
We invest into early stage startups focused on innovation and technology. Ion Mobility, an electric two-wheeler startup, is in an area that is known as hard tech or hard technology. It is focused on a very important issue that is especially prevalent in Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia is one of the world's largest markets for motorbikes, and motorbikes pollute more per kilometer than cars.
Southeast Asia is the third largest motorbike market in the world, behind China number 2 and India number 1. As a market by itself, Indonesia is the world's third largest market, with an average of 6 to 6.5 million units sold each year. In Southeast Asia, the market is valued at about $23 billion this year, with Indonesia representing half of that volume.
And in recent years, Indonesia has stepped up efforts to accelerate its EV market, which opened a window of opportunity.
Indonesia started to talk about EV transition policies starting in 2018. That certainly made me notice electric mobility, specifically electric motorcycles, as the next big thing in Southeast Asia.
And so the M1S was launched in late 2022. The vision is for it to be a computing platform that can accommodate future features.
It's not just an electric motor with a battery on 2 wheels. We have gone to great lengths to engineer an integrated 7-inch display unit which contains triple computer chips, processing chips, with advanced sensors at the back, onboard storage. What that means beyond having a fancy speedometer is at the back of it having all kinds of advanced ride and vehicle analytics alongside advanced features to achieve our vision of an electric motorcycle with an API. And we want to deliver more than just air and noise pollution reduction to our riders. We think that we are strongly poised to be in a position to calculate the precise carbon dioxide reduction that we're taking off the roads with our vehicles.
But it is still early days for the M1S in the BRI.
The greening of the BRI will come at its own time and pace. To act effectively on sustainability, we're going to have to succeed as a product, succeed as a company, have more products in order to better appeal to all of the target segments, such that we can then be a force to be reckoned with and earn our seat at the sustainability table. But that, I think, is something that you have to ask me again in years to come.
Beyond green innovations, green financing plays a critical role to address the large emissions gap in Asia.
We know that Asia is the key battleground in this war against climate change, because Asia emits about half of global greenhouse gas emissions. Singapore's own emissions are small, but as a major financial center for the region, we will do our part. We will do everything we can to advance the development of green finance in Asia.
Asia is very diverse, and it makes the transition to net zero complex. It requires a toolbox of innovative products and financing, and we have to assess the credibility of transition plans of our customers in order to provide them with the right financing instruments. A sophisticated financial market like Singapore is well established and well capitalized. We've got a deep pool of capital and a wide range of financial products that form the foundation of innovative green financing.
And to help companies transit from so-called brown activities to green activities, the Monetary Authority of Singapore has made a big push for transition finance in recent years.
Transition finance is basically trying to help the companies and the businesses to plan out how they are going to reduce the carbon emission of their current operating activities, while also taking consideration of the employees. And we also do not want to have a sudden disruption of the livelihood of people.
Transition financing completes this picture of what we mean by sustainable finance, because we are facilitating the measures that may still rely on fossil fuels. So they're not quite green yet, but they're going to become greener. And it's an interim solution until the greener options become available at a commercially viable rate.
And Singapore's financial institutions are helping to nudge that transition to greener options, providing the capital flow to businesses which are already on their way and divesting those who refuse to transit.
The green investment principles provide a framework of environmental social standards that BRI projects should adhere to. The path to building large-scale assets for societal and environmental good is not always green itself. It comes with pollution, biodiversity challenges, community, labor issues, and the green investment principles ensure that participating banks, like DBS, apply high standards to the implementation of those projects. The Belt and Road Initiative is about scalability because it is one of the largest infrastructure initiatives in history. And with scale, it brings down the cost of many of these emerging green solutions, and we need to reduce that premium that we see now in order to become a climate-friendly planet.
When you look at the whole notion of sustainability, it is also about not trying to expand and trying to keep your development in a very compact manner. So that whole notion is actually also being sort of adopted in a lot of these emerging economies.
Singapore's expertise in infrastructure development has always been one of its key strengths, and its ability to export that expertise has its roots in its decades-long bilateral relations with China.
For professionals in the built environment, China opens up a whole new stage for us. When you step into China, it's blue sky for you. You can plan cities, you can invest and build cities, you can build highways, railways. What we did in China 20 years ago is still relevant, simply because we have many years of working with China. We have decades, at least from Suzhou Industrial Park, 3 decades of working with Chinese state-owned organizations.
This deep cooperation has resulted in a synergy that benefits both countries.
We have so much experience dealing with the Chinese. And it's also the Chinese companies that are comfortable working with us. And speaking the same language is still very important to them. And so together we continue to have this ability to work with them, to work on the project on the third country along the BRI.
One country in the BRI that is benefiting from Singapore's expertise is in Central Asia, Kazakhstan.
Kazakhstan is the 9th largest country by land size in the world. So you can imagine how much land there is. Almaty city is the original capital city of Kazakhstan. It's like Singapore in the 80s, 90s, and they only have a population of barely 20 million.
In 2020, SJ City Global, a subsidiary of Surbana Jurong, delivered a master plan to the government of Kazakhstan for a smart city outside Almaty.
About 10 years ago, the government has already identified that the future growth corridor is along a highway that's already built, located just outside Almaty city. The G4 city is right where this future sort of economic corridor is. So the whole G4 city, the planning area is about 1,180 square kilometers, and we're looking at a population of 2.2 million by year 2050 and creating another 1.1 million jobs within this G4 city.
A special economic zone, G4 City aims to be the new economic, knowledge and global tourism hub for Kazakhstan.
it started as a master plan project. And as usual with our training, with Singapore way of doing master plan, we're not happy with just planning the land given to us. We plan a larger area. And the study area is 1.5 times of Singapore. We met the minister, we met the Prime Minister, and explained why we think the G4 city should be done the way that we have envisioned from a master plan. And since then, we've been engaged to help the Kazakhstan government to actually develop the next steps for the project. So our role has evolved from a master plan to one of managing the development.
With 2.2 million people expected to live in G4 City, there are opportunities for Singapore firms from a range of sectors.
We are not just building houses, we are actually building economy. They are like, if I may say, the early years of industrialization waves in China. So, of course, there are industry sectors that may be open for Singapore companies providing services like what we're doing, planning, engineering, or providing urban solutions such as sustainability, energy solutions, or waste management solutions, also construction of infrastructure. It's about building a sizable new city over a trajectory of 30 years.
Singapore companies can consider partnerships with players in the ecosystem, given that infrastructure projects are typically quite large, increasingly complex, and involve multiple disciplines. Our good infrastructure ecosystem, coupled with a full suite of professional service offerings, can co-create sustainable solutions that complement those offered by the Chinese companies and financial institutions.
Beyond infrastructure projects, Kazakhstan offers other opportunities. In Central Asia, it is Singapore's largest trading partner. In 2022, bilateral trade in goods totaled 412 million Singapore dollars.
Kazakhstan is the region's largest market. It has a very well-developed technology infrastructure, a very well-educated workforce, and consumers there are now easily connected. They are looking for more ways to consume. They are looking for more travel opportunities. They are also looking for more ways to enhance their lives. Startups, they are in different areas, whether they are in consumer tech, hard tech such as mobility, and so on, can tap into these doors that are now open.
And it's not only in Central Asia where doors are opening.
Western China, with its expansive territory and rich resources, has become an important engine of China's economic growth. Southeast Asia and Western China are already close partners with strong complementarity economic fundamentals. In this context, the CCI-ILSTC assumes an important role in enabling Southeast Asia and Western China to leverage each other's strengths.
The ILSTC, or International Land Sea Trade Corridor, is a joint project between the Chinese and Singapore governments, linking China's western provinces with Southeast Asia through Chongqing by land and sea.
The trade corridor is an example of how Singapore is working with China to enhance connectivity in the region. What used to take 3 weeks now takes a week or less. The time and cost savings benefited many of our traders and businesses. More importantly, the trade corridor also contributes to the resilience of regional supply chains, as we saw how goods continue to flow, even in exceptional circumstances such as the pandemic.
We are discovering that connectivity, due to the infrastructure build-up, due to the BRI itself, has resulted in many opportunities that are now available. And so startups and small businesses, medium-sized businesses that are looking into tapping into a growing consumer class should expand into regions or countries where the Belt and Road initiatives are present in.
We are always looking for new frontiers. And of course, as you move along BRI, as you get to work in different localities, you then will meet with different business partners. And when you have more business partners, sometimes you will find that there can be interesting synergy that you build out of partners along these different locations. So the more you work along the BRI, the more you have that kind of network and resources that you can call upon.
These corridors provide rich opportunities for cross-border cooperation. It calls for an understanding of local market rules and requirements on the legal risks. Legal services are needed to help Chinese and other companies engaged in BRI-related projects.
As the Belt and Road Initiative grows in the number of participating countries and businesses seek to tap into markets, there will be an increasing need for a range of legal services.
BRI projects are complex, in part due to the sheer scale of such projects. They tend to be very massive, involving many different parties from different jurisdictions. You have commercial parties, you have state-owned enterprises. There are different types of laws that interact in a BRI project. There's no one master contract that all the stakeholders, all the parties kind of sign on to. You have a contract between the project owner and the contractor, and then the contractor with the subcontractor, subcontractor with subcontractor. So you have to navigate the different laws that may be applicable.
Singapore is globally known as a leading legal hub, with a system especially suited for complex cross-border legal issues.
We are seen to have an efficient, stable government, relatively free of geopolitical tensions. We have a high-quality legal system, and we have an international setting and proximity to many fast-growing economies, particularly in Southeast Asia and beyond and into the Asia-Pacific region.
Singapore's legal services sector conjures up an image of a melting pot where practitioners from all over the world converge. With the lawyers coming in, you also see more and more of what we call legal services providers coming in. So I'm talking about insolvency practitioners, forensic experts, litigation funders. For BRI-related businesses and trade, there are a whole host of legal areas that legal practitioners in Singapore can provide advice on.
Where we could be assisting clients would be services relating to capital markets, corporate mergers and acquisition, banking and finance, competition and antitrust, intellectual property, international trade, real estate and investment funds, and of course, dispute resolution.
Lawyers may guide and advise clients through negotiations and contractual matters. But complex legal issues in high-stakes deals will always give rise to the risk of legal disputes.
You know, if something goes wrong, there could be a lot of uncertainty as to how to resolve the dispute legally based on different laws and precedents. Furthermore, this leads to economic costs. The more the law diverges, the higher the cost of reconciling it with each other.
And so, to address the complexity and diversity of cross-border disputes, a wide range of dispute resolution methods is required.
Singapore is strongly positioned as a dispute resolution center because it offers a very strong suite of dispute resolution options, each with, I would say, highly enforceable outcomes. We have arbitration as one option with the Singapore International Arbitration Centre. There is also litigation through the Singapore International Commercial Court. Singapore also offers mediation through the Singapore International Mediation Centre.
Being a diverse, connected, business-friendly country, it is absolutely essential for us to have a legal system which can effectively manage legal disputes between parties from different backgrounds, contexts. And I think the biggest strength Singapore has to offer when it comes to its legal system is its flexibility.
And I'd like to start by taking the tribunal to Annex A of the budget. This is the dispute resolution.
In the past decade, arbitration has been the preferred method to resolve cross-border disputes.
Arbitration allows parties flexibility to choose the governing law of their contract, or what we call the seat of arbitration, and to choose their decision makers, namely the arbitrators. The arbitration process is also confidential, unlike the court process, which is open to public scrutiny. And there are only limited grounds under which one can challenge an arbitration award once delivered. This gives parties certainty and predictability. In the context of cross-border deals and transactions, parties may not always be comfortable going to the domestic courts of either side to resolve their commercial dispute. What companies want is a trusted, predictable, and neutral international seat, to use a technical term, or else a place to resolve their cross-border disputes.
And Singapore is an attractive choice, not only for its neutrality, but for the quality of its arbitrators.
I had a client who does business out of a third world country, and he entered into a contract with a foreign party, decided that any dispute arising under this agreement would be resolved via arbitration in Singapore. Unfortunately, a dispute did arise. We appointed a tribunal. The arbitrators were highly qualified, highly capable, understood the complexity, were able to narrow down the issues and distill the issues. The entire process, from the time we commenced the arbitration to the final award, was just under 2 years. So at the end of the case, my client commented to me, we had to resolve this dispute in the national courts where he was located. The case would have taken many years. His business would have closed down.
Singapore as a venue or seat for international arbitration is often a middle ground, acceptable to both sides. Singapore has taken very deliberate steps to ensure that we have a strong legislative framework and support for international arbitration. Today, Singapore is the most preferred arbitration seat in the world, ranked jointly with London, and the most preferred arbitration seat in Asia Pacific. We serve users from all over the world. Close to 90% of SIAC's cases are international in nature.
Besides arbitration, another way to resolve disputes is the non-adversarial approach of mediation.
When one goes to an arbitration or a litigation, the court or the arbitrator will look at the legal issues to resolve it with a legal solution. Often there'll be one winner and one loser. For mediation, we look beyond that. We look at how parties can continue to work together. I think mediation is especially suited for Asian companies because for Asian companies, the relationship is critical. So I think mediation has that advantage of focusing on a longer-term relationship and not just immediate results. Over the last couple of years, we have seen a very strong uptake in the interests of both law firms as well as companies of mediation as a way of resolving complex commercial cross-border deals.
In 2021, a case mediated by the SIMC made headlines in the legal community.
As a mediator, I cannot bind the parties. My job is to get the parties to find a solution themselves. Sometimes it's quite hard. They've been fighting for years. In September 2021, I was invited to mediate a dispute between an American company and a Korean company. They went into a joint venture, went well for a while, then they had problems, and then the agreement was terminated. There were 5 arbitrations around the world, US $1 billion involved. After 7 years of fighting, they decided to mediate. They didn't want an American mediator, they didn't want a Korean mediator, they wanted somebody neutral. So Singapore, we have that advantage for us. I knew that the relationship between the parties was bad, was poor. I had to find some way to diffuse the tension. So I decided to bring mooncakes and tea from Singapore to the mediation. And when we started the session, I just went around pouring tea and serving them mooncakes. And I think it diffused the tension. And parties were very happy, and we got started on the right footing.
So when you look at BRI projects, they are long-term, they are complex, they involve multiple parties, and very often governments as well. So Singapore is in a unique position to really play an important role. At the end of the day, the project has to work. The relationship has to go on. So mediation provides that opportunity to do that.
Aside from arbitration and mediation, parties to a dispute may decide to litigate instead. While potentially more expensive, it is also more transparent. And the Singapore International Commercial Court was set up in 2015 to offer litigants that option, with a panel of experienced specialist commercial judges from around the world.
We were founded really to play an important role in relation to the broader system of transnational justice. The strength and depth and range of our international and Singapore bench has enabled us to develop flexible procedures that are unique to the SICC. There are two types of dispute that are really well suited to the processes and procedure that the SICC has. One of those is disputes arising out of financing and investment and even joint venture investment contracts. The other is disputes arising from a large infrastructure project, which of course is very much what the BRI is about. The SICC has instituted a list for technology, infrastructure, and construction matters, which we call the TIC list. And the TIC list builds on the expertise of our bench in construction matters and applies to those disputes flexible procedures that are really best in class when it comes to how one manages a construction dispute. As a commercial business, one doesn't care how one's dispute is resolved. What's important is a swift and fair outcome.
And to maintain that ability to ensure swift and fair outcomes, Singapore's legal fraternity cannot rest on its laurels.
It really is critical that we keep to heart the two core reasons for Singapore's success as a dispute resolution hub. The first is the integrity of our system, which enables the international business community to put their full trust in Singapore. The second is our openness to the involvement of others, and that gives others a stake in Singapore's success. It also means that we stay abreast of developments and improvements and refinements elsewhere, because we are integrated into what is an emerging system of transnational justice for the resolution of international commercial business disputes.
The Singapore story has always been one of building connections and capitalizing on opportunities.
Singapore is an open country that is always looking for connection with the rest of the world. BRI, to me, is basically trying to build a conduit to connect various countries and companies, so there will be more business opportunities that naturally come towards Singapore.
Singapore has a very good brand. It is trusted, it is innovative. Singapore businesses should fully ride on the Singapore brand when we go abroad to enter new markets, enter into new business relationships.
We have effectively synthesized and brought about the best of all worlds in order to deliver this cross-discipline, cross-border kind of collaboration that effectively represents what I think the BRI in spirit is about: uniting, connecting, and bringing about positive ideas, talent, and capital flow.
The BRI will continue to evolve, but its roads are already paved for Singapore to explore.
What is interesting about the BRI is that there is no overarching treaty governing the BRI. What it is an invitation to open economic development. From Singapore's perspective, I think Singapore has a pool of very experienced financial, legal, and other professional service providers. So these are opportunities that I think present themselves.
I think it is always the wish of Singapore to have the boat lifted for everyone rather than just Singapore. Even as the region continues to develop, I think there will still be a big role for Singapore.